Kim Jong-un, first chairman of whatever his title is, in deference to the agreement between the DPRK, North Korea, and U.S. What agreement?
We don't know anything about any agreement. Either the Koreans are making this up, which they're not, it's not beyond them to do that, or there's some sort of a secret deal that has been made, which is less likely.
Not that secret, right? Because
no, now that they're saying it out loud. We know that the Koreans don't do anything, the North Koreans don't do anything for purely altruistic reasons. So if they've released Mr. Fowl, there must be something they're expecting in return, or something they've been promised in return.
Will, you've got sources there. You were discussing them earlier. Is your head anywhere on what agreement would be in place? And if there were an agreement, why would it include Fowl, who hadn't even been sent to trial yet, and not Kenneth Bay, who is obviously in much worse shape and held there under much more curious circumstances?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors at play here, Chris. One is the fact that Fowles, out of all three men, his charges were considered less serious. His case was less complicated. He simply left a Bible, whereas Matthew Miller was accused of tearing up his visa, committing a hostile act. North Korea thinks he was trying to get into the country to expose widespread alleged human rights abuses that were detailed in that UN report earlier this year. And, of course, Kenneth Bay, a missionary accused of basically a Christian plot to overthrow the regime, he's been held longer than any other Americans. So those two other Americans' cases are much more complex, which may be why Fowl is the first to be allowed out.
All right, well, thank you for that. So, Bobby, help me understand this, because there's something about it that's inherently nonsensical. Yes, Fowl was there 5 months, hadn't been tried yet, basically just left the Bible in a place, and that was seen as offensive because even though you have state-sanctioned religion, you know, churches, this was seen as outside of that. But why him?
The Koreans...
Not that we're very happy that he's been released, by the way.
Yeah.
But it just seems unusual to do one and not him and Bay, or all three. Why do it this way?
That is quite unusual. I mean, unless this is part one of a three-part or two-part program where the other two will be released shortly, especially since they're now making this out as that Kim Jong-un personally released him. If Kim Jong-un is willing to exercise personal power, then all three could quite easily be released. In North Korea, any kind of missionary activity is seen not as an insult, but as almost a threat to the state. The state this is a state that tries to control the way its people think. So any attempt to go outside of a very small group of state-sanctioned churches is potentially a challenge to the authority of the state, and they take that very seriously. So in the case of Ken Bay, he's already been in jail 2 years. He's been sentenced to 15 years. That shows you just how
hard labor.
Hard labor. That shows you how seriously they take that.
You know, I don't know about the translation here, but, you know, it's interesting. They use the word in deference to an agreement. You know, this is a country that has been openly hostile and contemptuous of the United States especially, and to use the word in deference out of respect of, that's an interesting word. But if there were a deal, don't you think the U.S. would have come out and said that we've made an agreement? Because this has to be a black eye. You know, the way you describe the DPRK, what makes them so different than all these other bad guys, by U.S. definition, that we do business with all the time that the U.S. is cutting deals with?
Well, mainly they don't want to do business with us, and not just with us, with anybody. The South Koreans, with the Japanese, except with China. They don't want to do business with anybody, and even with China, there's a certain arm's length. They depend very heavily on China, but they like being this isolated country. That's their whole point. They don't want their people, the leadership doesn't want their people exposed to too many outside
So you don't think it's about the U.S., you think it's about them?
Well, they're under several pressures. They are worried that the United Nations might take them to the International Criminal Court because of human rights abuses, and that may be part of their thinking. They've not been in communication with the U.S. for a while, and this may be an attempt to open the door to a conversation. One thing is clear, they're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart or out of sympathy for Mr. Fowl and his condition at all. If they're doing this, in their minds, there is a quid pro quo. They're expecting something in return, something that's already been promised to them, or they're just expecting it.
All right, well, we'll have to see what happens next with it then. Any way you look at it, it's a good development. It's good that someone's getting out of there who doesn't belong there by the perspective of the Western world anyway.
Any part of the world, honestly, and it's a very, very strange place. So to expect rational, to be able to make sort of rational sense out of their actions, sometimes not so easy.
Well, it's good to have you to try it nonetheless. Bobby Ghosh, thank you very much.